Welcome to the Safety and Risk Success podcast with me, Christian Harris. I'm joined today by Mark Wilkinson, and we talk about his rollercoaster life from being a really successful DJ to then having some truly terrible things happen to him and the recovery journey he's been on, and what he's now doing, which is helping organizations and people to better understand themselves through something called e-colors, which we speak a lot about. There's an assessment for that, which I took, and we speak about my results and what that means and compare and contrast that to Mark's profile as well. We speak about leadership, psychological safety, some limiting beliefs, and how to drive through safety culture. I'm sure you'll get a lot from this episode. And if you want to give the e-colors assessment a go, the link will be in the show notes, and there's a code there as well for a bit of a discount too. Hope you enjoy this episode with Mark Wilkinson and myself speaking e-colors and much more. Cheers.
Welcome to the Safety and Risk Success podcast with Christian Harris. We believe that proactive safety and risk management powers business performance. Each week we explore this theme, sharing guests, stories, insights, trends, hints and tips. You can find us on all the major podcasting platforms, and video versions are available on YouTube. But for now, let's join the conversation with Christian.
Good to see you today, Mark. Thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Hi, Christian. Thanks for having me on, mate. I really appreciate the invitation.
No, it's good. I think some really interesting stuff for us to talk about, and we'll go into psychoanalyzing me a bit later on, but we'll start by talking about you. So you've had quite an interesting sort of personal journey from a DJ to what you do now. How has kind of your journey, I suppose, influenced what you do now in terms of, you mentioned a minute ago, actually, before we started recording, going from being sort of loved as a DJ to, shall we say, not loved within safety. How's this all kind of influenced the way you've gone?
Yeah, thank you for asking. It's been really fascinating journey for me. Yes, loved as a DJ for 20 years, traveling the globe, doing all these crazy things that I got up to, which I've written about in the Life Remix book there. And wonderful times, great fun. Looking back on it now, some of it was quite misguided. But at the end of the day, I enjoyed music. Music was the sound of emotions. And as it turned out, with my e-colors, when I first did them about 14 years ago, I was a yellow over blue, and most yellow blues, or certainly people with that higher emotional side of themselves, are musically orientated, as my first e-colors report actually said to me, said on it. So it's been an amazing journey. I love music. I still love music today. Music's a big part of me. It's not where I spend most of my time nowadays. It got a little bit toxic and a little bit difficult for me at one point. But I was resident DJ at Ministry of Sound. I had a top 10 hit with Lou Reed and David Bowie 20 years ago now, and I've had some wonderful experiences in the music world and traveling the globe. So that's been amazing. And then I had health issues. I collapsed one day. I couldn't walk for about 18 months. I sort of spiraled downwards mentally as well. Because when you can't move and you can't walk and you're used to being the party and the life and soul of everything, it was really, I guess, depressing is the only word I can use. And I did have some suicidal thoughts. I never would have done it, but they were there. And they were very difficult to deal with, some 20 years ago now. But then after that, I lost everything as well, materially as well. That was really difficult. So it was a real sort of difficult time in my 30s. But I decided to dust myself off, thankfully, and start to get myself together. I reached out. I had some therapy. I did some coaching, or I was coached, I should say, by some very impressive people, including Bob Proctor, who's sadly no longer with us. And I learned more and more and more about myself. And as I did that, I started to look more around for different opportunities outside of music and events. And one of those was health and safety, and I started to read up on it and study about it. And one of the big things that really got me was the psychology of accidents. How do these things actually happen? So I started to read up on that, and then a friend of mine who works offshore in oil and gas showed me about NEBOSH, and I studied my NEBOSH IGC. And in there was a section on the psychology of accidents. So I was like, this is
Mm.
great for me. This is perfect for me. And then the last bit on top of that, which is how I find myself here today, is that another friend on an oil rig said to me, "I see what you're doing self-development wise. Have a look at this e-colors, this equilibria safety tool that we use on the oil rigs." So I did my questionnaire like 14 years ago. I didn't think much of it was. I just sort of did the questionnaire. Nice and easy. It came out as a yellow over blue, big socializer, big relator. It told me in no uncertain terms, you love life, you love people, you love parties. I'm
Yeah.
like, hang on a minute, you've just described the last 20 years of my life in like two paragraphs. It says you're musically orientated, probably play a musical instrument, you like to volunteer for charities. I'm like my head's going, what? How do
Yeah.
you possibly know this about just some? I've done 15-minute questionnaire online. How do you know this? And then it said, and bear in mind, it was designed in a high risk industry. It said, however, your personality style could also get you hurt or even killed by jumping in to help someone else without thinking. You find it virtually impossible to stop yourself jumping in to help.
Mm.
Ooh. And I'm going into health and safety, and I've read this, and I'm like, my goodness, everyone needs to know this, surely, because that was me, and there's 12 other personality styles as I discover in the Equilibria universe, and
Mm.
we've all got our own way of being hurt. We've all got our own way of things that can go wrong, um, and so I've just made it my mission ever since, just to share with as many people as possible via my book and all the other things that we're going to talk about. Simply because I want everyone to have this level of self-awareness that allows them to manage themselves in a positive way.
Mm. Mm. So we'll talk about the e-colours assessment a bit later because I did it, and so I'm happy for us to talk about what my results were and what that means and stuff, and we can compare and contrast. I think that'll be quite interesting.
Yeah.
And we'll give the link for people to give that a go in the show notes, and we'll talk about it at the end as well. But I thought it'd be good just to pick up on a few kind of themes that you have spoken about and written about before we delve into that. So I suppose the first one you kind of touched on was psychological and behavioural safety. So how do these things kind of play into improving the overall safety culture in an organisation, in your experience?
Well, certainly, giving people information about themselves, and I guess the question to ask back to you would be:
Hmm.
do different personality styles see and manage risk differently?
I would say that different people see and manage risk differently, and therefore there must be something about personality styles in that. Yeah.
Exactly right. And so, therefore, and I'm not, I ask that question a lot.
Hmm.
Majority of people, if not everybody, says exactly what you just said. Because yes, some people will dive in, some people will, just want to get the job done. Some people will avoid conflict. Some people need lots of data and information. When
Yeah.
you start to like put all of that together, you start to realize that actually with e-colors, I am now yellow over red, and you're
Mhm.
blue over green. So actually, we will have differing views on this, and as you say, we'll talk about it. But to answer your question, the way it happens in organizations, I often get contacted by people that say to me, I've done everything. I've done everything. They've done all their training. They've got SMSTS. They've got, IOS safely. They've got NEBOShes. They've got this. They've got that. They've got every piece of training I could possibly give them. And
Yeah.
yet, boom, something awful happens, unfortunately, right? It's fascinating when we look at this, that the safety professional is a good-hearted person that wants to do everything they possibly can to make sure that they keep people safe, and we all go home and go back to our families
Hmm.
every evening. And yet, with all the policies, the procedures, the robustness of everything we've possibly got, we still have problems. Well, why? And that to me, I'm not a massive detail guy. I'm not a very high green. I don't have a lot of data, and analytical side of myself. And I'm fascinated by people, though. And I want to give people as much as I possibly can so that they can keep themselves, out of trouble, keep themselves safe. And so what we notice is when we go into companies, we give them this self-awareness after they say they've done everything. We give them more, and they look in the mirror a little bit, and then they look at all their workmates. If you and I were working together, and I have high yellow tendencies, and you know that about me, and you
Yeah.
know that one of my natural tendencies is to jump in and help in a situation, and we're in a, I was going to say high risk environment, but we're anywhere, doing anything, and you see me go, oh, and I'm just about to jump in and help, and you see the problem perhaps that I didn't, you could actually stop me and say, Mark, wait, you know, or I've got my own play and pause button on my wrist here,
Yeah.
which ties nicely into the music thing, by the way. But this play and pause button on my wrist here is for me to say to myself, hang on a minute, Mark, pause. Am I making this situation better or worse? Am I actually adding value to it? Am I doing something, or am I just putting myself in harm's way or doing something that could cause me to get hurt?
Yeah.
And when you give that level of self-awareness to people, you see accidents reduce, you see incidents reduce, you see insurance claims reduce, you see improved customer service, better productivity, you see everything that the health and safety profession really wants to embrace. You see it. And the challenge is for health and safety people to, dare I say, open their minds more to this and actually
Mm.
observe people and learn themselves, and then share more information with their people. Because Jason Anker, MBE, who I'm sure you know, fell off a ladder 30 years ago.
Had him on the podcast recently. Yeah, him and his daughter Abby. Yeah.
What an amazing guy. I listened to that episode actually. Yeah, what an amazing guy Jason is. And Abby, fantastic. Well, they're coaching clients of mine. Jason is also yellow over blue. And if you ask
Yeah.
him about the day of his accident, I showed him some years ago about what actually or what the answers for a yellow blue would be about how they could get hurt. I showed it to Jason. He sat back in his wheelchair and he said, if I'd have known about that before my accident 30 years ago, it may never have happened.
Mm.
And for someone who, has had that life-altering, life-changing injury to say that to me, I said to him, I said, Jace, can I use that, please? Do you mind? Can I share that with people? And he said, please get it out there. So now Jason has embedded some of the e-colors into his talks because he wants to share this with more people, as do I,
Mm.
because it is a game changer. Some people need more time to think it through. Some people need more time to accept it. But we did a session in Dubai last week with an amazing company called Dulsco. So thank you to Martin Brogan and the team over there for inviting us in. Multicultural group, huge group, fantastic group. One of the lead health and safety managers, a guy from India, red over yellow, e-colors, he said to me, I thought this was all just grey matter, but now I see the colours. And actually, that was really beautifully put, right? Because we're all different, and we all, need to understand personality as the tip of the iceberg of a human being. By the way, not a definition, but
Yeah.
an indicator of these questions that we've asked scientifically: how you can get hurt, what makes it difficult to stop the job, why don't I follow procedures, how to address the procedural challenge, teamwork, errors, you name it. Equilibriums have done an amazing amount of work.
Mm. Mm. So you mentioned there one of the challenges being sort of getting the safety professional to be a bit more open-minded and think about this. And I would share that perspective on what I do. I think, it's the challenge that I face is getting people to be willing to sort of take a second look at
Yeah.
the issue that I work in. What would be the other kind of key challenges to getting psychological safety kind of more embedded within an organization, particularly, I suppose, in like a higher risk environment?
Yeah. What tends to happen historically over the last 20 plus years, when Lewis Senior and Paul Grant started the company, it happened because there was 4 fatalities on one particular oil rig in Nigeria. So Lewis was sent there with the e-colors concept and turned that rig around basically from 4 fatalities, lots of major incidents and issues alongside that as well, and turned it around in 3 years to a zero incident culture. And the e-colors played its part in that. The challenges are, I think, from our perspective as health and safety professionals, you talk to most health and safety professionals, including myself as a chartered member of IOSH, we talk about being proactive rather than reactive.
Mm.
And yet the majority of people that I talk to that work in health and safety, generally, they're working for their company and doing what the company, needs them to do to provide to keep everybody safe. but quite a lot of the work ends up being reactive.
Yeah.
There's been a problem, and now we're going to react to it. Yeah. And that's not necessarily the health and safety professionals' fault, because ultimately they're not necessarily the complete decision maker on these things. It's the
Yeah.
leadership's fault. But ultimately, and we don't do blame, but it's the leadership's leading that can
Yeah.
cause the challenges. So the challenge is showing people the proactive approach of giving their people more information around safety based on their personality style, and then leading with that. Probably you need like 12 months to actually show statistical reductions. But I've got one company here in the UK that have reduced accidents and incidents by 25% in the last 12 months. And that's just one. I've got multiple other companies that we're working with globally where we can show that these statistics are actually, in place and things improve. But it requires strong leadership, good leadership, open-minded leadership, and probably the support from the leadership to the health and safety professional, so that they can go with a proactive approach and actually give their people more information. I trained this to a group of carpenters recently, and I went into the room and I said, right, how many of you know anything about personality diversity? All blank faces. I said, okay, I understand why that is, because DISC, Insights, Myers-Briggs, all these, personality styles programs that are out there, they're generally only kept for the leadership,
Yeah.
only kept for the leaders. Now, the thing with the e-colors is it's for everybody. We've got 7-year-old children that can do their e-colors and have done their e-colors. It's for the labourers, it's for the rigs, it's for the people that are doing the work that could get hurt.
Yeah.
Those are the people that need this information. Yes, it needs to come from the top, and the leaders need to be in on it and making sure they're leading it, but it must filter right through the organization so that the person who's at the sharp end of things has an ability to manage themselves in a stressful situation or a challenging situation.
Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah. No, it all makes good sense to me. A couple of other things I wanted to pick up on that you've mentioned before. The first one was limiting beliefs. This is something that I see a lot, and it's something that I recognize sometimes in myself. I can't do that because of X, or that's not necessarily true, but we can tell ourselves these things, and they can hold us back from doing things sometimes.
Yeah.
What would you say are the most common limiting beliefs that you see generally among sort of leaders, should we say? And then are there any sort of nuances around people that are in safety, so safety leaders versus, a CEO type person?
Well, the first point is that limiting beliefs are generally our subconscious programming, and quite often we've been programmed by, by the age of about 7, 8, 9, 10, we're programmed
Mm.
by the people around us, families, teachers, various other people around us. They program us from a young age. And then we tend to go out and live from those things unless we challenge them, unless they're challenged. So quite often it can be a life-altering experience that actually helps that person grow as an individual and be more open-minded. But those limiting beliefs, they're so embedded in humanity. And two of the biggest challenges that I see that people really struggle with when I'm coaching, not just in a health and safety environment, but everywhere,
Mm.
are time and money.
Yeah.
Time and money, and also as well, if you start to talk to people about diet, they tend to like spin out a lot as well. So there's a lot of limiting beliefs or a lot of strong beliefs in people about time and money and diet. But we'll leave diet alone today. But the time and money aspect is the thing that can really limit people from making a decision, taking up doing something proactive. Because a lot of people will be like, well, we haven't got time for that, or it's going to cost too much or whatever. And it's part
Yeah.
of that, showing people that, first of all, it doesn't have to take up days and days and days and weeks. In fact, it can be embedded very, very quickly. When you want a psychologically safe culture, you want people to understand how they can get hurt, and you want to coach people to improve, which is what the e-colors is a tool for improvement. And the practical applications of it are very, very important as well, because it is sticky. It sticks with people. You never forget. I'll never forget after today your blue-green tendencies, Christian. But the limiting beliefs are very much around time and then around money. It's going to cost us loads of money or whatever, And it's
Yeah.
just simply not true. It's simply not true. It's like, for us, you don't charge a 7-year-old school, kid the same as you would charge the head of Chevron or anywhere else. You make sure that you find the happy medium, the equilibria for everybody. But it takes time, limiting beliefs really entrenched in people, some people would just be like, I don't need that. Why do I even need that? And again, that can be a problem because again, it's that kind of closed-minded approach. Whereas
Mm,
actually, if we open our minds, and this is what we do with a lot of people when we start, we run a pilot session and we get the feedback and we say, look, here's the feedback, let's see if you want to take this further. And when a company does take it further, you do that 12 months or so and you see the results. It's what every health and safety person wants in their toolkit is the ability to understand we've got all this wonderful shiny safety management system and everything else, and yet we're still having problems.
mm, mm. Interesting, isn't it?
It's fascinating to me. I find humanity as a top color yellow as well. I'm a big
Mm,
socializer, big engager. I am fascinated by humanity. And it really does, the e-colors gives me a real insight into people, a real, way of getting information, sharing information about myself.
yeah.
And one of the really interesting things, I've been at a few seminars and conferences recently, and one of the few things that I found really interesting was that, and I don't necessarily agree with this wholeheartedly, but a lot of safety people spend a lot of time with documents and making sure that everything's in place. Someone said, well, a few people said at a seminar recently, well, AI is coming and it's going to write all your policies and procedures. And I was a little bit like, you still need the human being to make sure that it's correct. But what they did say, the same people said, the health and safety professional needs to evolve and needs to become more people centric so that
Mm,
they can coach and work with people. And I was sitting there smiling to myself, thinking, well, first and foremost, I'm a people person in a really
mm,
big way. And by the way, I've got this amazing safety tool here that can benefit all of us. And all we need to do is look at it and have an open mind about it and try
mm.
it out for yourself is the big one. Because
Yeah.
when people say to me, I don't like that, it's a bit like trying to teach a child to eat spinach, right? If you say to the child, "Well, try it," and they go, "No, no, no, I don't like it." You say, "We haven't tried it. Try it first, at least." So it's all part of the process. So
Yeah, yeah. Those people must have been listening to me because I've been saying basically that story around AI for the last 18 months, or since AI became massive. Is it 18 months or 12 months? I can't remember now. But
I mean,
that exactly that. It's all about the soft skills now. Well, very very soon it's going to be all about those soft skills in
if
safety.
I hold this up on the screen, how can I get hurt from a personality perspective? And you start to look at the four quadrants and you
Mm,
start to understand each individual person is generally shows a leaning towards their top two colors.
yeah.
Um, as I was a yellow blue, now I'm a yellow red. The green doesn't really mean much to me. And then we've got things like the intentional communication guide, where we have a nice layout of, blues and greens need more detail, yellows and reds need less detail, and lots of great things that we give out to people
Mm,
to help them with their communication so they actually get an intentional and a positive result in
yeah.
safety, in leadership, in anything.
Mm, mm. What about so let's say we've bought into that and we need to change and we need to do things better and so on and so forth. Something else you speak about is responsibility and ownership, and this is a topic that really does resonate with me uh, because it's something that I have grappled with myself in terms of not making an excuse for something outside of my control and instead thinking internally about what I could have done better and so on. Um, how important is that, and how would you kind of coach and advise people to improve in that area?
Absolutely. A fantastic question. The word responsibility needs to be hyphenated, and it needs to be hyphenated into response and ability, which is your ability to respond. Yeah.
Mm.
And the whole thing with e-colors is we react from our personality. And if
Yeah.
we can pause and play on the personality, then we can get to response, intentional results. intentional communications with whoever we're talking or listening and communicating with. So taking responsibility is absolutely key to anybody's growth. And the more responsibility that you're prepared to take, the further you go up the tree, you end up in very senior positions because you're able to responsibility.
Mm.
And the people that blame or push things away, or avoidance, don't take ownership and stuff like that, they're generally the ones that don't really rise completely to the top. And it's part of growth for people to realize that responsibility is absolutely key to everything. The problem is that many people have fears, subconscious fears. It could be about anything. I mean, there's a great book called Think and Grow Rich, which is a couple of copies sitting there with a guy called Napoleon Hill, where he studied 500 millionaires for 25 years and he wrote it all in that book.
Mm.
And he talks a lot about the six major fears. Most people are living with one, if not all. And of those six major fears, the way to get past them is things like I said, subconscious conditioning, which we do in coaching, improving people. Some people need therapy for deeper fears and deeper issues, but ultimately getting people past their major fears so they can take responsibility. I see a lot in corporate. I worked in corporate for many years after my comeback from my incurable disease, etc. I remixed my life and worked in corporate for many years. I just see so much fear there. There's so much fear, and it's a shame. But people, a lot of people they want to go and do their job, and they want to take their wages and get home, and that's it. Many
Yeah.
people are fearful of, rising up the ranks or sticking their neck out, if you like, and it's a shame. But fear is, well, Bob Proctor, my coach from many years ago now, he said, fear will stop you faster than a speeding bullet. And it might be that you're not even consciously aware of those fears. But when people come to me for coaching, we find them out pretty quickly, and the e-colors opens the door to that. And then we
Mm.
start to look at those subconscious fears. And that's how I work with people. And when I'm coaching people, I like to coach them for 12 months. And I have a 12-month coaching program, which is accredited by the Institute of Leadership, because I find very often it takes quite a long time to weed out those subconscious fears.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So if we're thinking about a safety director, let's say, um, would it be a sort of fair thing to assume, and I never like assuming, but just for the purposes of making an interesting question in this podcast, assume that actually the fear is something goes wrong, someone gets hurt, and then that they're sort of found out, or that they're kind of discredited, or is it something around? Is that one of the big fears specifically from a safety
From a safety
professional's
point of view,
perspective?
I would say that there can be fears of that. Yeah, I mean, one of the big leverages that I've heard people use a lot of the time is, well, if something goes wrong and we're stood in front of the judge trying to explain what's gone wrong, we better make sure that we've got everything right.
Yeah.
Which is where very detailed people, are excellent in safety, because that is key. It's legal, it's legality, it's absolutely key.
Mm.
But certainly, if I have been in senior roles before. I can't say I've ever been in a safety director role specifically, but I've been in some very senior roles at Heathrow, at the Olympic Stadium, and other companies. And I know for a fact that I would have slept a lot better if I'd have known that there was a behavioural and psychological safety program running like e-colors throughout that company, so that everyone coming onto that site would have understood themselves better than when they first came into the room. So if it took 1 hour or 2 hours or 3.5 hours or whatever it took, when they went in that room, they came out with more information than when they went in. And
Yep.
that would have made me feel a lot more comfortable. And that's one of the things we like to do. We like to do this for companies, and yeah, it's growing ever more year on year. and it's a really global thing. We haven't done it hugely in the UK. It's been used in the US by Chevron. It's been in Transocean globally. It's been over many sites across the globe. 1.4 million people have completed their e-colours questionnaire. So it's a big deal, but it can be a lot bigger. And I want to give it to the guy, the young Jason Anker. I want
Mm.
to give it to the guy that is rushing to try and get the job done because he thinks he needs to
Yeah,
do it right for somebody as quickly as possible. Those are the people that need this information. So
yeah, yeah. Let's talk about the assessment then questionnaire. I don't know what the right word is. I'm sure you'll tell me.
both of those are
Um,
fine, Christian. Both of
both
those
of
are fine.
those are fine. Yeah. Okay. Good stuff. So talk us a little bit through kind of what it is, how it works, and then why don't we sort of go into some of the outputs of that, and perhaps we could talk a bit about, well, you and I have got different results, if that's the right, again, if that's the right
Yeah,
phrase. Maybe
yeah.
we could talk to sort of some of those differences and what that can illuminate about our personalities and therefore what might happen to us in certain situations.
Absolutely. So you go onto equilibria.com and you discover your e-colors. It takes 15 minutes to complete the questionnaire. Shouldn't take any longer than that. You must answer it with your natural tendencies, not learned behaviors. So I've sometimes had people come up, they've done the questionnaire. Well, I say sometimes, it's literally happened once. But I had a young lady coaching client and she did the questionnaire and she said, I don't really get this. It doesn't sound like me at all. And her results were blue over red. And so I said to her, okay, I said, could you go back, please, and redo the questionnaire? I said, how did you answer it before? And she said, well, I answered it as my work self. And I said,
Yeah,
okay. I said, can you go back and just be yourself, not a work self, so natural rather than learned
yeah,
behaviors, and then get the report then, see what happens. She came out as a blue over yellow, and she read
yeah,
the blue yellow report, and she went, oh, this is exactly me. I said, right, okay, and now we can work from that, right? So again, that's how you answer the questions, and it's 35 questions. You've done it yourself, Christian.
yeah,
What are you most like? What are you least like? And
yeah.
we believe that everyone starts off as 25% of everything.
Mhm.
So when they start off as 25% of everything, then what are they most like? What are they least like? And then it just works its way through
Yeah,
the whole questionnaire. So if I showed you my pie chart, there's my pie chart there as a yellow
yeah,
over red, and you can see 40% yellow, 26 red, almost 25 blue, and my green is quite low
yeah,
with my 9%. And then I'll show you my wife's pie chart. That's my wife. You might notice that it's 3% yellow. That's why she's not
yeah,
on this call. And red is exactly the same. She's actually green over blue, not dissimilar to yourself in that respect, but very, very high green. So you get your percentages like that, and you start to understand a bit more about yourself and the people around you. And then if it was me, I would upgrade to the premium report. The premium report is 33 pages long, and it's an amazing piece of work, giving you lots and lots and lots of information about teamwork and safety, and leadership and everything else in between. And then what I suggest you do is you can use lots of different things on the Equilibria website, and you can get lots of information, or you just come to us and join one of our calls. Join one of our calls to learn a bit more about yourself and other people.
mm.
Um, so you said your results
So
were
I'll give you mine. So I was roughly 30%, 31% blue, 28% green, 27% yellow, 14% red.
okay, cool. So that's really interesting because you've got a very close green and yellow.
Yeah,
So yeah, so green is detail, yellow is socializing and engaging, which is why you're comfortable doing this podcast and you want to engage and want to put
yeah,
yourself out there. But what it means to me is you lead with empathy
mhm,
as a blue. You lead with empathy and compassion, and you'd be thinking about how this makes people feel. You'd be leading that way. With the green, you like to think a lot about the details and get all the organization right, and you've got good systems in the way we've booked in this podcast, and the way you've got good systems in place for that. And your yellow engagement, your red, your doer is your lower percentage, but it's still 14%. And we often say there's no better or worse, there's no up or
yeah,
down,
yeah,
it's just personality, and we call it a style, by the way. And there's
yeah.
there's little semantics in words here. It's not a type. If
No,
you're a type, you're put in a box and you're like, right,
mm,
you're an empathizer. There you go over there. No, 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 no. We're looking at styles and personality styles. So what we say about this is with the we have a wells analogy, which means you can dip into all of these wells. The hardest
Yeah.
one for you to reach is the doer to take action.
Hmm.
That's your
Yeah.
hardest one. Doesn't mean you can't. It just means it's not, for me, my lowest one is green thinking. Doesn't mean I can't do it, but I have to dig a lot deeper to get there. I'm not a massive deep thinker.
Mm.
But then if we look at the blue over green and we look at the thinking relator, um, let me read you these top 5 bullet points about how you could get hurt. And let's see. Now,
Yeah.
it probably won't be a full house 100% because you've got quite, it's only 31 blue. So it's not,
Yeah.
40 or 45, whatever. But let's just read through a few of these and tell me what you think. How you could get hurt, okay? By relying on other people, by not getting the information that you need, by being disregarded, when someone shouts, or through a loss of concentration. What do you think about those?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I can see certainly if someone shouts at me, I don't like conflict. So if someone shouts at me, I could see me not reacting well to that, and yeah, that could lead to something bad happening.
Well, top color,
Yeah.
top color blues generally they withdraw. They
Mm.
tend to
Yeah.
go a bit quiet and just be like, oh, I don't want any of that, thank you, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But if I make you aware of this, then that's something for people to start to go, okay, right, well, perhaps that's something I can work on.
Mm.
You know, um, there's a lot of other things here about what makes it difficult to stop the job. From a safety perspective, is really interesting. What makes it difficult for me to speak up in a safety conversation? And
Mm.
from my perspective as a yellow over blue, what makes it difficult for me to stop the job? This is 15, 14 years ago. Someone might get mad at me, and I don't like confrontation as a yellow
Yeah.
blue. And you can recognize that in yourself as well. But that was
Mm.
really strong in me, really strong
Yeah.
in me. And you can recognize that in yourself because you've got high yellow and blue as well. So
Yeah. Yeah.
there's some crossover here based on percentages, which is fine, by the way, because here's the
Mm.
thing. We're not telling anyone what their e-colors are, right? We're saying, what do you think? Here's a
Yeah.
conversation starter. Let's
Mm.
talk about this, right? If we can talk about how can I get hurt, what makes it difficult to stop the job, and all this other stuff at the start of a project, imagine how much easier the communication will be when there won't be conflict because it'll be like, Christian, sorry, am I upsetting you? You're backing off here. I need you to get involved and speak up on this one. And if there's disharmony and stuff like that, then we need to work on that so that we can make space for you to speak and share. Very, very important. But when I read that about myself after being loved as a DJ, that wasn't a problem. But being not loved as a health and safety professional, that was a big problem. And I
Yeah.
looked at that and I was like, wow, I need to work on that. And so I
Mm.
reached out to Lewis Senior, one of the founders, met up with him, and here we are 10 years later or more. And I now work with him, in multiple ways. What makes it difficult for a yellow over red, which I am today, only by 1% change? What makes it difficult for me to stop the job? Nothing. No problem at all. Nothing. I hope you like me. If you don't, I'm going to live with it. But
Yeah.
we're still having the safety conversation because I'm okay. I don't worry about what your reaction is going to be. All I'm interested in is making sure that we're doing things right and doing things in the right way. But that's my journey. There are multiple other journeys
Mm. Mm.
and we all have something where we're strong and we
Yeah.
all have something where we are a little bit limited.
Mm.
And when it's put in front of you like this, it's like, oh, wow. And you can then choose to do something about it or not. And no one's
Mm.
pressuring anybody. But generally, most healthy human beings are committed to growth in
Yeah.
one area or another. And so therefore, for me as a people person, I just want to help as many people as possible, be self-aware, get
Mm.
home safe at the end of the day. Here's the thing. Not everyone follows procedures. In fact, a lot of people don't even read the procedures. I'm sorry to have to say, but that can happen, right? The people on the ground don't necessarily read their risk assessment or their procedures, or
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
they
Very
just
true.
don't.
Yeah.
They just don't. But if you actually show them this and then give them a wristband or a little sticker on their hard hat, if they want to show it and they want to do it, it has to be voluntary, mustn't be forced on them. But if you do that, and people, I would, when I'm on a construction site, I'm putting a yellow over a red on my hard hat so that you know how to come and communicate with me. And that is just fast track.
Mm. Yeah. Like that. So, is there a particular? There's obviously no right or wrong to this because, as you say, everyone's different. But is there a particular, uh, you know, let's say an accountant, would on average have a certain mix of two colors, whereas a uh, double glazing salesperson would have two different colors. Is there something like that where you would say, you know, on average, a safety leader would be in these kind of realm of colors?
It's a very, very interesting point. Um, I've got a lot to say on this point. I'm going to try and condense it in the best possible way. So, our ethics are very much about the fact that our tool is not for job
Yeah,
creation, but we're very ethical on that. There are other tools out there that I've even had one used against me 15 years ago or more, where they said, "Well, you're this inspirational engagement kind of guy, and we've got this other person we're interviewing who's the detail and very action orientated." And they chose him, not me, and they told
yeah,
me that based on my personality. And I felt really bad about that. I was like, that's not good. And Equilibria, we don't want people to have a negative experience of Equilibria, so we don't allow it to be used in any kind of hiring or firing or promotion or anything like that.
yeah, yeah,
But we
yeah,
do we do use it for coaching individuals. So you get the job, you're the right person for the job, you come in, you've got the right credentials. Then we find out, then you do your company induction and your safety induction, and then you'd find out your e-colors, and then we all know how to communicate with one another. Because I've met some brilliant engineers that are top color yellow, whereas a lot of engineers would be maybe more red, green, green, red on the task orientated
yeah.
side.
Mhm.
But this is why you mustn't use someone's personality ever against them.
Yeah,
Um, I said to you earlier before we started as well, because people call it a test. It's not a test. It's an indicator. It's an opportunity to grow. And when it's used in an ethical, positive way, it becomes an absolute game changer for individuals. The last thing I'll say about it is that certain tools, in fact, I believe from what we've studied, but Myers-Briggs, when it first came out, came out in the Second World War and was designed to assess the female workforce here in the country and put them into jobs that would suit them, which nowadays is not anything that we would ever support or be involved with. There is a certain level of thought that if you're really happy in your work, it's because you're satisfying your strengths, particularly in your e-colors assessment, your e-colors questionnaire. And
mm.
I can I can attest to that because I've worked in health and safety for many, many years. And in some cultures, in some places, I've not been particularly happy because they've been driving me hard on facts and figures. They've been driving me hard on spreadsheets and detail. And you saw my little 9% green. It's not my strength. And actually, nowadays, I coach. Well, I write books, but I coach. I'm a public speaker. I work one to one and with huge companies. And everything I do is aligned with my top color yellow strengths. And guess what? I'm very, very happy.
You do well, and yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm good at it. I'm passionate about it. I'm happy. So I think there's a certain element in that. But the key thing here is it's not for us at Equilibria or even an employer to tell that to a person. The person needs to find that out for themselves. And therefore, if they want to, if I want to, I can get into that green detail. I can do it.
Yeah.
It's just harder for me to do it, but I can do it. So if
Mm.
I want to do it, if I want to be an accountant, then please give me the job as the accountant because I'm the one that's gonna make that decision. Someone else should not make that decision based on a short questionnaire that I've just done. So
Yeah.
that answered the question. I know it's quite long, but it's kind of
Yeah,
where
yeah,
I'm.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's just it's interesting to just think about, what can we learn from this? And I suppose so in a team, then let's say we've got I don't know, a leadership team of a business, a board of a business. Would we want to have a sort of balance then of the different kind of colours, and is that what would make a good team, or actually if we were all kind of similarly aligned, but we understood it and we could sort of play to their strengths and get some support where we needed it, would that also work?
Yes, the answer to the question is yes to both. As long as people are living in their strengths, so managing their strengths and then or playing to their strengths and managing their potential limiters. And you'll notice that we call it a potential limiter, not a weakness. A lot of other tools will be like, these are your strengths, these are your weaknesses. But actually, a potential limiter just means, well, there it is, and you can choose to do something about it or not, but that's up to
Mm.
you. So there
Yeah.
are companies where we've had, for instance, all the leadership team have been, in this case, I'm thinking about they're all top colour red, and they were just butting heads all of the time. But that would happen the same if they were all yellows, all greens, and all blues. But it was
Yeah,
just so
yeah,
it happens that this particular group were all reds, and they were butting heads. But naturally, over a period of time, the team just changed, and now they do have a more balanced approach. But what I would say about that is, if you have a whole team of yellows or reds or greens or blues, all they need to do is just play to their strengths, and
mm,
then, if you need a bit of help or you need to outsource something. But I need to outsource things all the time as an entrepreneur and a business owner.
yeah,
I outsource, work to people that are better at it than me, so that I'm not wasting my time and I'm actually doing things that I am really good at.
yeah,
So, but I would suggest that, one of the things, first start point is actually showing people their e-colors, and we do something called a radar chart. And on this radar chart, we actually plot everyone out in the team, and
very nice. Yeah,
everyone can see where they sit in the team, and so they can see and they go, "Oh, right, okay. Do you know what? If I need a quick decision on something, I might go to this person and say, because I'm green, blue, maybe I'm overthinking stuff, or I'm worrying a bit too much about what it might feel for the other person. So, but I'll go to that person and say, what would you do in this situation? They're top color red, and they go, well, I'll do that. Boom. And you go, okay, well, thanks very much for that. That's really useful. That's really great teamwork. That's bringing people together.
mm,
And it's a whole other training that we do as well, obviously on the teamwork front as well. But
yeah,
yeah, leadership teams, any human being, can learn so much about themselves. I've got a lot of practitioners. We have a lot of e-colors practitioners that all work with myself and David Senior.
yeah,
Um, and I had one recently, and he said he took the e-colors into a group, and he showed them their e-colors. They'd never seen it before. There were 5 reds in one little quadrant, and there was one. So he called them an outlier, but it was one green blue just down the bottom there, and the green blue was always worrying about, and all these reds were all like go 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 go. And he showed it to them, and he plotted it out, and they all just sort of sat there and looked at each other and went, oh, right. And in his words, and he's only recently become a practitioner, he's a coach with his own tools. He's brought the e-colors in, and his words, this is the fast track for me to get
mm,
to where I want to get to.
yeah. Nice. So you've given some good examples there of kind of like yourself figuring out where you were and then working and slightly changing over time, and some other examples as well. Have you got any good case studies of where people have kind of implemented this in an organization and then over, 12, 24, 36, however many, 48 months, it's kind of tangibly made a difference in terms of kind of some of the sort of safety outcomes they've been able to achieve?
Absolutely. I mean, I've got so many. We've been working for about 12 months or more with Kinetic, which are one of the main contractors for the Ministry of Defence.
Hmm.
Marie Louise Chandler brought us in, and we've had a fantastically positive effect on her UK safety team. So much so that she wants to bring in about 10 of her own staff to become practitioners in the business. So we're going to
Yeah,
roll that.
nice. Yeah.
And multiple others.
Mm.
We've got the company at Heathrow with 25% reduction in accidents and incidents. And to be honest, the really big one, is 20 years of Chevron, one of the top energy companies in the world, using the e-colors on that rig in Nigeria start point, then across every rig in the Chevron portfolio. It's been a global piece of work for the last 20 years. And we recently, because of the 20-year anniversary this year of Equilibria, we recently got a video testimonial from Mark Nelson, who is the vice chair of the company, and he's still very much on the up in the company. His e-colors are red over green, and he said on his video, always want to think about the actions that you made us take as a red, but the most important thing he said was, we taught him things about himself and about others, and that he was particularly grateful. And he said, stay intentional, keep your leadership intentional, get the results that you would like to get. And the whole thing about Equilibria, if you think about the word, it is about balance, isn't it? The
Yeah.
goal is not to try and be 25% of everything. The goal is to be balanced, and actually have self-awareness, have team awareness. I always remember everyone's e-colors, and then tailor my communication to them. When I was younger, I used to think I used to think that everyone was like me. And I used to observe myself communicating with people and realizing when I was being too much for them and thinking,
Yeah.
why am I being, how am I being too much? I don't get it. And then suddenly someone showed me green blues and blue greens, and I married one. That they're more steady paced, they need more information, and they need like, quiet time and thinking time. I'm like, what's really? But that wasn't me. But
Mm.
being introduced to that has allowed me to be a lot more open-minded, forgiving, understanding, and having that play and pause button on the wrist is just
Yeah.
powerful.
Good stuff. So, where can people learn more? I mean, we'll include the links in the show notes, but where can people learn more about how to take the assessment? And then, have you got anything else you wanted to plug? Should people, connect on LinkedIn, for example, or I suppose the
Yeah,
floor's yours to plug away.
absolutely. And it's been a real pleasure having this conversation. Um, yes, please do connect with me on LinkedIn, Mark Wilkinson Official. I'd love to see you there. My website is markwilkinsonofficial.com. There's all links and stuff to my book, and my book's on Amazon, Life Remixed, etc. Go to equilibria.com and carry out the questionnaire. You can find out your top two e-colors for free. It'll just give you a little mini piece of feedback about your top two e-colors. And it's a really interesting exercise. You can always
Mm.
log back in and do a basic report, which I think is about $5, I think, or you can upgrade to the premium report. And if you use Life Remix Premium, you'll get 20% off the premium report, which will take it to about £32, which is not a lot, and
Yeah.
is ultimately the most important self-development document that I think I ever owned. Because Bob Proctor said to me, Mark, know your strengths and know your weaknesses. And I remember thinking, like, I don't
I, I don't have
how
any weaknesses.
well,
So
yeah,
yeah,
but
thank you.
yeah, well, that might have been part of it actually. Yeah, back then, yeah, gloriously unself-aware. But strengths and weaknesses, I was like, well, I don't know. And then I did the questionnaire, and it just came out, woo, strengths, potential limiters.
Yeah.
And I went,
Yeah.
right, great, and it was so quick, and it just gave me a real head start. And I personally used it to bounce back from a bankruptcy off the back of the incurable disease to a six-figure salary in 3 years. And
Mm.
that's not me going, aren't I great? It's just a fact, because I looked at my strengths, I looked at my potential limiters, and I worked on it. I
Yeah.
was committed, I was worked on it. So one of the last things, well, the last thing I want to say is we run every Tuesday morning from 9 till 10 a.m. We run Life Remixed and Equilibria leadership session now here in the UK. It's all recorded, so if you want to sign up and register and you want to receive the recordings, you will. But this Life Remix leadership series, a lot of the major players, including obviously myself, but a lot of the major players from Equilibria are on the calls, and it's very much about showing people, giving people a taste of the e-colors, but also leadership and what the
Yeah.
leadership, how it works, why it works, and also each personality style has a different leadership. So reds are more directive, more telling, go, direct, go. You, blue, you'd be more compassionate, a more compassionate leader. My wife, green, Emma, she's more a strategic leader. And yellows, us yellows, we like to think we're inspirational leaders. Maybe not everyone agrees, but that's fine. But the point is that that's what we like to think, and I like to inspire people. That's what I want to do. In
Yeah.
fact, it says it there. Look, to bring
Yeah.
joy and knowledge and inspire and create, and that's what I want to do with my life. And nowadays, that's all I do. And I'm much happier doing it. So I'd love to connect with your audience, Christian, and I really want to say thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mark. It's been really interesting, and thanks for sharing and diagnosing me a bit as well. I'll go away and work on some of those things. So
Happy to
and
help.
keep you up to date with how that's going too. So yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And thanks for joining Mark and I, and we'll see you again next week on another episode.
Thanks for joining us on the Safety and Risk Success podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit follow and do share on social media. Does anyone you know spring to mind as a great guest, even yourself? If so, please contact us on podcast@slipsafety.co.uk. See you next week for another episode.